Okay, you just need to hold on 1 second because I need to call Disney right now and pitch them that, because I think that is brilliant. I was one of those people. I was not considering W'Kabi as a potential replacement. I was mulling in my head, it's like, sure, Shuri's a good option. M'Baku is there, but I don't think he's ready. But everything that you just said about W'Kabi is just amazing. I'm sold. Wow. All right, hello everyone. In this episode, we'll be talking about Black Panther 2 and the overall future for the character within the MCU. The world is still in shock over Chadwick Boseman's tragic passing, and as we continue to mourn the loss of a truly amazing actor, some tough decisions are going to have to be made soon regarding Black Panther 2. Could we see Killmonger returning to take over as Black Panther? Would Shuri be a better replacement? Could someone else take the mantle? Or should the franchise recast T'Challa and continue with the direction the MCU already planned on? It's a big episode, so let's dive right in. I'm joined today by my good friend, Nick. Nick, how you doing today?
Doing good, Jacoby. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Of course. You excited to talk about some Black Panther stuff?
I couldn't be more excited. Black Panther is an awesome movie, is an awesome character, very tragic, unfortunate situation, of course, with the late, great Chadwick Boseman. But it's a topic I'm looking forward to discussing.
It is an interesting topic because there's so many different avenues of which the franchise can go moving forward, and they're in a tough spot. At least I think so. It's just like I think any choice that they make is going to be a difficult one. What do you think?
Absolutely. Like, the word is unprecedented because the MCU has not really faced something like this before, to my knowledge anyway. So I'm very curious. There must be a lot of thoughts going through all their heads over at the MCU.
Yeah, and and we're not here to say like one of these ways is the right way to go or it's the definite one that they should do. We're just here to discuss some options, and I think I want to first turn to one of the biggest options that you look at the internet and you hear this chatter going around about like what people want, and one of them is Killmonger. Eric Killmonger returning to life in some way, shape, or form and becoming the new Black Panther and potentially leader of Wakanda. Have you heard about this? Have you heard the internet rumble about this?
I've heard a rumble or two. I don't know how much credence there is, but I think there is a way it could work, but let's talk about it. Do you think it's possible?
I think anything is possible, within the MCU. They can do a hand wave away and just be like magic, or spiritual realm, or vibranium magic, or I think they could make anything work, in terms of the MCU. How they do it would be interesting, but I don't know if I want, Killmonger back as the Black Panther. I thought he had a really solid arc in the first one, and the way, sure, he met his demise at the end, but I thought that was very fitting for his character. Do you think there's still places to go with Killmonger, or do you think it's a good cap what we saw?
I don't think there's many places to go. If there's one place, and one of the main things I've been seeing is people want redemption for this character, and I understand the call for it because he's a great character, and we want to see him again. I don't know that Killmonger can be redeemed. I think his ending was perfect in the sense that it wrapped up that character. I think he was killed off because the writers and the director knew that there was no other place for that character to go. So I think bringing him back now would sort of undo some of the things they meant to do with Killmonger at the end of Black Panther.
Any new sort of story with him would have to be him on a more heroic path, and I don't know if I want to see that. I mean, I would like to keep Killmonger in my memory as he is right now, Absolutely. I also worry that it would betray what the character himself wanted, because the fact is, at the end of Black Panther, he had the option to live. Now, obviously, when Black Panther was shot, no one knew we would be in this unfortunate situation. Right. But the character of Killmonger did not want to live. So to me, bringing him back would almost betray what that amazing character wanted. I'm torn. I'm perfectly conflicted here. So overall, I think it's complicated with Killmonger. So let's kind of move on to some other options, I guess, to move forward with Black Panther. I think one of the other big ones that I think people would want to see and could really get behind is Shuri, T'Challa's sister. Because I think she, in my mind, she was a scene-stealing standout in the first Black Panther movie, and putting her in a new position to take over and become the queen of Wakanda and lead Wakanda in her brother's absence, I think could make an interesting, story arc moving forward. What are your thoughts on Shuri?
Absolutely. The second we were introduced to the character of Shuri, I knew that one day she would probably take the mantle from T'Challa, from Letitia Wright, from Chadwick Boseman. I think she's a great character. I think she has a lot of promise. I think the character we've been introduced to this point in the MCU, in my personal opinion, I don't think she's ready for the throne just yet. I think we need a Black Panther 2 and a Black Panther 3, maybe even, with a different person holding the title Black Panther, one who's more ready to rule. Shuri, and it's just due to the nature of her age, is a little less mature than a lot of the people around her, even though she's one of the most brilliant she's the most brilliant mind in the entire MCU. She still has that sort of kiddish immaturity to her that I don't think lends well to a ruling role just yet.
But that could be the arc, right? I think an interesting arc would be putting her in a position where she has to both confront the spiritual and the scientific side of being a leader of Wakanda, and I just think that would make for an interesting arc that leads her to being queen. But I think maybe you're right. Maybe it can't. Maybe right away she's not ready. Do you have somebody else in mind who you think could feasibly take over?
I absolutely do. And just to quickly touch on Shuri one more time, I agree with the arc. I think the arc would be awesome. I just don't think it could be done in a singular movie. I want to see it over a couple of movies. While she's doing that, while that arc is happening, I think there's someone else who could take the role of Black Panther that I haven't seen mentioned a whole lot. The character I'm talking about is W'Kabi, played by Daniel Kaluuya. Now, W'Kabi also sort of needs a redemption story. That redemption story that everyone's talking about for Killmonger, I think, is much more feasible for a character like W'Kabi, who was best friends with T'Challa, and he betrayed T'Challa because he got in his own emotions, he got in his own head, and he did something, and he went against his king and his friend. I guarantee you, W'Kabi is sitting in a Wakandan prison somewhere, and if they wanted, they could make this character regretful that he betrayed his best friend, that he betrayed his king, and undeserving of a redemption story. And I think that's the best reason to give him one. I think you could put W'Kabi and Shuri and Okoye and Nakia and M'Baku like all on this journey. And they need to bring W'Kabi along for some reason, but he's so reluctant because he so doubts himself after what he did. And the whole movie would just be him becoming this great character who is fit to lead and who the others start to see as fit to lead. And I think W'Kabi would be a really interesting choice to take over the Black Panther role until Shuri comes of age, as it were.
Okay, you just need to hold on 1 second, because I need to call Disney right now and pitch them that, because I think that is brilliant. I was one of those people. I was not considering W'Kabi as a potential replacement. I was mulling in my head, it's like, sure, Shuri's a good option. M'Baku is there, but I don't think he's ready. Okoye, possibly. I mean, like, they've proven that they're capable characters, but everything that you just said about W'Kabi is just amazing. I'm sold. Wow.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I think W'Kabi was underutilized. I think he's played by one of the greatest actors today, Daniel Kaluuya. I think he could definitely carry the weight and the role of Black Panther. So make Black Panther 2 W'Kabi's journey to becoming worthy, and at the end of the movie, he becomes the new Black Panther. Then we get a Black Panther 3 with W'Kabi as the titular hero, and then at the end, W'Kabi decides it's time to step down because Shuri is ready to take on the role.
Nick, I love your idea. I think W'Kabi could be a great alternative. But just in case the higher-ups at Disney, aren't listening to this podcast episode and they don't, listen to that really great idea, the other option that I think that they're probably going to have to think about is recasting, right? Because they had T'Challa as a character already established and set up for really great things. And yes, the passing of Chadwick Boseman is sad, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the character of T'Challa has to be killed off as well. And that's such a tricky thing and like kind of a minefield to kind of work around, because I think on one hand you can see why retiring the character of T'Challa is important, because it's honoring everything Chadwick Boseman brought to the role. But on the other hand, wouldn't the best way to honor Chadwick Boseman be to continue on with the T'Challa character that means so much to so many people? I don't know. What do you think?
It really is tricky, and there's unfortunately no way to know what Chadwick Boseman would have wanted, what he thought would have been the best way to honor him and to honor the character. But recasting has to be at least an option.
Avengers Endgame set up everything of just like he is going to return back to his country, and we're going to see. We haven't seen Wakanda in 5 years. What is Wakanda like after 5 years? Post-snap, environment? Is there going to be unrest? Are they still the world's leading superpower? Are there new threats coming in? Is he going to have to defend his kingdom a little bit? There was so much more to do with the character that recasting to continue on the story just might be the way to go. But then if you're sitting in the theater and you're watching this new actor play T'Challa, yes, I'm sure a lot of us can suspend our disbelief, but if you're there, Nick, sitting there in the theater and you see somebody else, does any part of you be like, is overshadowed by the fact that, it's kind of awkward that this isn't Chadwick, or are you able to separate yourself from the character and the actor?
I think at first it would be hard for anyone. But if you look at the MCU, recasting is not a new thing. They recasted War Machine from Iron Man to Iron Man 2. They recasted Hulk from The Incredible Hulk to The Avengers. And yes, at first, it's War Machine's entrance into Iron Man 2 is literally, yes, okay, it's me, deal with it, let's move on. Which I always thought was kind of a funny meta thing. But I think eventually if you pick the right person who can bring life to the character, just like Chadwick Boseman did, I think eventually everyone could look past and also see this person as T'Challa. But Jacoby, the question is, who's it going to be?
I think in that case, you got to go with someone we don't know, though. I think in that instance, you cast a basic no-name, which, to be fair, like the MCU would do normally. I would imagine if this was a brand new superhero, they would cast someone who's not necessarily a big guy that can lock down for a long time. But any sort of name star, I think, would overshadow. I think you have to bring someone who you can mold into T'Challa. Would you cast a name, or would you do something different?
I would think about casting a name, only looking at the example that the MCU has set in the past, again, with War Machine and with the Hulk. They got certainly actors with names to replace those roles from actors who had names originally. The person I'm thinking of is John David Washington. I think would be a really great Black Panther, especially he just had an amazing performance in Tenet. He had a really great performance in Black Klansman. John David Washington is the name I think of, but I also really like your thought on the no name, giving them sort of the ability to make a name with this.
But I just feel like casting a name, if it's the right name, if someone who's a really talented up-and-comer who can do the role justice, I think that's going to be okay.
And I absolutely understand your hesitations, and I have them too, because if you look at a situation like Carrie Fisher and Princess Leia for the last Star Wars movie, there's not a soul who wanted anyone else but Carrie Fisher to be Princess Leia. It feels very similar with this. I think the only difference that you have to consider is Star Wars was at the end. We had a very long time with Carrie Fisher as Leia. I think in this case, Black Panther was just getting started, and Chadwick Boseman did so much to get him started, which is great and will always be remembered. And now I think because he has so many other places to go and things to do, I think recasting might be the right choice.
If you're the bigwig Disney executive and you're making the final call, what creates a better MCU going forward? Is it changing the narrative that you had to adapt to this very tragic thing, or continuing on this track and let the chips, lie where they fall?
If I am the bigwig, indeed. As much as I do really like that Wakabi idea, you still have to figure out a reason why T'Challa is not there anymore. And I think that's a harder thing to do, in my opinion, and to do that respectfully, to say, yes, this character that you loved, played by this actor that you loved that is unfortunately no longer with us, he's just not here anymore. If I'm the bigwig making the decisions, I give it time. I think if we heard a recasting tomorrow, everyone would be like, whoa, too soon. Back it up. But I think given the respectful amount of time, and if I am the bigwig, I do think I cast someone else, only because T'Challa, in my opinion, T'Challa is set up to be one of the leaders of the MCU now. Now with Iron Man gone and Captain America gone, T'Challa, Doctor Strange, these are the characters I foresaw taking over the MCU, inheriting it in a sense. This is such a weird situation that I wouldn't blame them for whatever their choice was.
Agreed with that. Whatever they're going to do, I think they'll craft hopefully in just a really respectful way.
Yeah, I agree. As much as the feelings I have on The Rise of Skywalker notwithstanding, it was definitely obvious that the movie would have been a whole lot different had Carrie Fisher unfortunately or not passed away. And that's definitely going to be the case no matter what going forward. But I think, my personal opinion, the most respectful thing and the best way to move forward would be to continue on with the character of T'Challa that Chadwick Boseman breathed so much life into, and hand the reins off to someone else.
I've long held that I feel like the new Avengers home base, because everything was destroyed in Endgame, should be in Wakanda. Like, that's because everything that they need is there, along with like the best scientific mind with Shuri, all the vibranium there. I've always felt like, that should be in Wakanda going forward, and you need T'Challa for that because of his interactions with the Avengers, of everything like that. So.
And you mentioned we haven't seen the fallout of the snap and things in Wakanda. We haven't really even seen the fallout of the end of Black Panther, really, because the end of Black Panther was a big deal. Wakanda was opening up to the world. And then the second they do that, they had to fight a war with a purple alien that sort of distracted us from things. So we haven't even gotten to see what Wakanda is like now that it is open to the rest of the world. And that's something I think that would be taken away from if we had to focus on this new character, this new storyline, and building them as a character. So I agree with you. The MCU is very thin on time in terms of what they've set up and where they can go.
Do you think, I think it's just fun to speculate, like where Wakanda is at the end of Endgame, that T'Challa is really going back to, because Shuri was snapped away as well, so their lead scientific mind who was inventing a lot of these things for them and really probably in charge of the outreach to the world was gone. And yes, we saw in Endgame that the world was basically in mourning still 5 years later and really haven't moved on, but is Wakanda in trouble, or do you think they operated pretty well post-snap?
I'm not overly sure, because you have those scenes in Endgame with Okoye sort of reporting from Wakanda, and how there's like earthquakes under the ocean and all these crazy things happening.
Namor.
Yeah, I know. I would love to see Namor in Black Panther 2, but that's a whole nother conversation. Basically, Wakanda survived because you see at the end of Endgame, T'Challa is standing there with his mother and with Shuri, looking over a Wakanda that is bright and full of light and full of life. That I think Wakanda survived, and I think that might even lend credence to the idea of Okoye or M'Baku taking over if they had done it for 5 years. Who knows? That's never been fully explained.
It wasn't. The brief glimpse we saw of Wakanda wasn't like Pride Rock post Scar and like Lion King, where just like everything went horrible. It seemed like they were able to function pretty well on their own, and I think that's why to bring it back to recasting, I think that's why recasting might be the best way to go, because that we want to see T'Challa go back to Wakanda and handle these things in these 5 years. By crafting a story around a new character who like maybe wasn't there or doing anything like that, I think is less impactful than seeing the character who worked so hard to become king and stay king in Black Panther suddenly lose his power and have to go back to his nation 5 years later and see like, okay guys, what's up? Like how are we different? Like, I put forward a lot of things right before I was snapped away. How did we do that? Like, how did we move forward with this? And I think that's the more interesting story to tell.
For sure, absolutely. One final pitch though on the W'Kabi story.
Oh, good.
I hope this wouldn't be considered insensitive. I don't think it would be, given that they put Carrie Fisher in unused footage at the end of Rise of Skywalker. But imagine W'Kabi finally becoming the Black Panther at the end of the movie, and he goes into the spirit world as everyone does when you become the Black Panther. And he talks to his father, perhaps, and then whoever he's talking to sort of turns away to walk into the spirit world, and there's unused footage of Chadwick Boseman walking right beside him as T'Challa.
I think that's the best way to go. It's chills again just thinking about that. So yours is a very respectful way. It's like you don't need to really necessarily see him talk. You don't need to see him have a conversation. Just seeing him walking alongside him is enough to be like, I passed the torch.
It's the same thing as Paul Walker driving away at the end of Furious 7, I think it was.
Yeah.
I don't know how I would feel about Shuri maybe standing at a funeral procession just sort of explaining what had happened.
That would be really awkward, just her saying, my brother did this, and now we really, mourn his passing. It's like, that won't work. Any other final thoughts as we kind of wrap up here?
My final thought would be, of course, there isn't a soul out there who wouldn't wish that this wasn't the situation people were in. It's very unfortunate and very unprecedented. But I think in order to honor Boseman and in order to honor Chadwick Boseman's legacy, I think the character goes on. The movies will go on. The MCU will go on as, in my opinion, the greatest franchise of movies to exist. And I think there's ways to do it and be respectful and tell a great story going forward.
I agree with that because obviously, as we said at the beginning, we don't know what Chadwick Boseman would have wanted for the character. But I have to think that from hearing him talk about how much the character, kind of meant to him and how much he loved the fact that T'Challa meant so much for everybody going forward, for the kids, all the inspiring stuff that T'Challa did for kids, that he would want it to continue on with as easy as possible and continuing to inspire kids and adults and us, me, I just think that's the way to go. But Chadwick Boseman, we definitely miss you. We wish you were still here. But okay, that about wraps up this episode. Thank you so much, Nick, for joining me on this adventure. It was a fun conversation. You sold me on a new Black Panther and then you changed my mind again. So you flip-flopped me like a whole lot there, but it was so much fun. And thank you, audience, so much for joining us. Like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Leave a comment down below what other topics you want us to discuss, and we'll be back next time with another awesome new comic book topic. Thank you. We'll see you next time.